Okay, for her dress, I'm going to use BG72 to start. And I'm going to lay down where I want to create some shadows. So let's say we'll start right here on her sleeve. I'm just going to brush away from this little crease in her sleeve and just lay down a little bit of color. That's just to saturate the paper a little bit and get it started. So then we're going to add BG75. I'm just going to again start here in the crease and brush up, but not quite covering the last color that we laid down. And then for our darkest, BG78, I'm just going to go right next to the crease and just make a little line. Okay, and then you go backwards, so you'll do BG75, and you're just going to go right over the edge of that 78 you put down and just give it a little bitty flick. And then you'll fill it in with 72. And I'm just going to flick right on the edge of this last color I laid down and flick it right out to the edge. Just like that. And then let's do the rest of the dress. So I'm going to go up here and get the top of her collar. And I'm going to kind of leave it white right here in the top of her bodice of her dress so that I can come fill that in with when I get closer to being done, so it'll be the lightest. And then let's do the sleeve over on this side. And her hair is going to be casting a shadow on her sleeve. So I'm going to fill in more of it, a little bit of an area on that side. Okay, and then I'm going to go to 75. And then 78, right where I want it to be the darkest. So I'm going to go right down the crease of her dress right there. Same for this side. And then I'm going to get the crease on her sleeve and a little bit underneath of her hair where it's casting a shadow. Then I'm going to go backwards with 75. And I'm just going to blend that edge of the 78 just a little bit. Just lightly, very, very lightly, barely touching the paper. And then we'll fill it in with BG72. And again, I'm just lightly flicking over the last color I laid down. Alright, and let's do the skirt of her dress. And so I want to put down my color to show me where the shadows are going to be. So she's going to have some shadows where the bear's sitting. And on this image there's some great dots here, so you can just kind of know that that's going to be shadowed because they've helped you out there by putting some dots to show shadowing on there. And she's sitting on her fanny, so that's going to have some shadows. And these creases will have some, just a little bit. Okay, so that kind of shows you where your shadow is going to be. Gives you an idea of where to put your next color, which is BG75. Okay, and I'm just going to fill in right where I put that color down already. And very lightly, just barely touching the paper. Because this is pretty dark colors, and so it's going to pull out away into your white area of your paper, and you don't want it to get too oversaturated. So just barely touch your paper. Okay. And then I'm just going to add some really dark shadows with BG78. So where I want it to be the darkest, like in the line of this crease on her dress, I'm going to put some there. And this little bitty patch right above the bear, there's a couple. And then down here, and then I want it to be shaded on this side of her dress. So I'm going to go down the side of her dress, where she's sitting. And this bear's kind of leaning over towards this side of the paper. So I want it to be a little bit more shadowed over there. So I'm going to put a little bit more of this darker color on this side of the bear. Maybe not so much on this side, because it looks like he's leaning more down on the girl's knee right here. Okay, and then I'm going to go back over that with BG75. And just very lightly flick over the top of your 78. Just pulling it out a little bit, softening the edges. And let's add a few little shadows down here on the bottom of her dress. So right here where she's got these cute little ruffles, I'm going to go right along the bottom of the ruffle and kind of pull up right where the little dip is. And this is BG75. And that'll add a few little creases at the bottom of her dress. Okay, now we'll go over it with BG72. Then fill the rest of it in. Just flick along the edges of your dark color, pulling it up into the white. Carefully going around your bear. I already colored his ear on this side blue a little bit. Okay, let me show you his ear where I colored it blue. And right here, I've gotten a little bit of my blue-green on his ear, so I'm going to use my colorless blender. I'm not going to put my pencil down right on where I made the mistake. I'm going to put it over here on the where it's still white, and I'm just going to kind of push it towards my little mistake. And then I'm going to let it dry, and if I need to go back, I'll go back and push it some more. But what it's doing is the ink's pooling up on the paper, and it's just pushing that ink out to where it's supposed to be. Okay, for her socks, I did the stripes different colors, so every other one is a different color. So we're going to start with YR21. And I want my socks to be darkest inside of her legs and lighter out here on the outside. So I'm going to take my line, and we've got YR21, and I'm going to lay down a base coat, and I'm going to skip every other one. I'm not going to go all the way across, about halfway. Same with this side. Okay, and then we're going to do YR 23. I'm going to go just about to where I finished coloring the YR 21 on. Not quite all the way. Okay, and for my darkest color, I'm going to use YR 24. I'm going to use that very sparingly right on the edges. Okay, and that's created quite a line, so I'm going to go backwards and do YR 23, and I'm going to go right over 24 and just lay down right where I laid my 23 last time, only extending it just a little bit. So I'm going to hit probably the end of my YR 21 at least. Okay, and we'll fill in the rest of the sock with YR 21. And again, I'm going right over the edge of my YR 23 and pulling it right out to the very edge. And since we have these colors out, I'm going to go up here real quick and do her hair bows. And for hair bow, I used YR 21 and 23. So I laid down my 21 first. I just gave it a couple little flicks on the hair bow. This side too. And then I went in and added a little bit of darker spots with YR 23. So I did right in the scrunchy part. And then I just did that little bow thing that's already on the bow for me. Just gave it a couple little dashes, and then I blended that out again with YR 21. So I'm going to start with W0, and again I want it to be darkest in the inside of her legs, so I'm going to brush on my darkest, which is W0, right in the middle. And then I'm going to feather the edges with W20s. And you can hardly see it, it just gives it a little bit of color on her sock. So it's casting a little bit of a shadow instead of looking like it's just all white. Oops, maybe a little bit down here on the bottom of her sole. And I'm just going to use E40 to lay down where I want it to be the darkest. So I want it to be darkest right along the bottom of his arm, along the bottom of his foot. Let's make this side of his foot darker. And he's going to be a little bit darker where he's squished down onto her lap. The bottom of his arm on this side. His neck's going to cast a shadow. A little bit on his ears on the underside. And he's going to have a shadow right above his eyes where his nose tucks back. Okay, and then I'm going to go with E41, and I'm going to go over that color I just laid down. Makes it easy when you just have a little bit of color already laid there, so you know right where to go. Okay, and then I'm going to add my darkest shadow with E42. And so it's going to be pretty dark right here where he's sitting on her lap. And where his legs come out. And his leg's kind of bent right here, so I'm going to give that a little bit of extra right in the crook of his knee. And his neck's still going to cast a shadow, so let's get right that. Where his arm is coming out and leaning against her. And the bottom of his face will have a little bit. Above his nose. Shadow the bottom of his ear. Okay, then I'm just going to go backwards and add E41. And I'm just going to blend the edges of that E42 just a little bit. Barely touching the paper. Just to soften the edges of your darkest color you just put down. Okay, and then I'm going to go over it with E40. And I'm going to fill in the rest of my white. Okay, so my bear is pretty light. So if you wanted to darken your bear up, you would just go back and do it exactly the same way. So you'd head back to E41 and add some more shadows in. And I just go right back where I laid it the first time and put some more on there because I want to darken him up just a little bit. But I really like this light brown color that I used. I'll just give him a little more texture. Okay, and then we'll put more 42 on to give him even more shadow. And then I'm going to soften my edges by going backwards with 41. I'm just lightly tapping over the edges of that 42. And then I'll fill it in with 40. He looks pretty good. And then I think I'll add a little bit of pink into his ears. So for that I'm going to do R20. Just right in the middle of his inner ear I'm going to give it a little bit of pink. You could also give him some pink on his cheek if you wanted. So that's our Tilda this month. I think she turned out pretty good. That's the first time I've done red hair, so I really like how that turned out. But in this month's kit also is included a Spica Buttermilk glitter pin, and for that I put it on her sock. So let's go do that real quick. And the pin's just going to add a little bit of sparkle, and it's kind of a little bit of a yellowish color. So I'm going to add it right here on her socks, right where I laid down the dark part of her color of her sock. Just add some glitter on there. I just added a little bit of sparkle on there. I know you can't see it very well on here, but it just adds a little bit of sparkle to her outfit. But doesn't she look cute? Also in the card this month, you remember you're going to have to cut her out, and it's not that hard. You can do it. And there's also these great My Favorite Things mini rolled roses on here. You're going to get these in your kit, and there's also going to be another video you can go watch on how to do those. Okay, so I hope you had a good time, and we'll see you next time. Bye.